Tonight, Tulsans are preparing for the full force of the flood as water released late this afternoon from Keystone Dam is rushing toward the city. In several hours, neighborhoods along Riverside Drive will be underwater. Good evening. I'm Jill Lyon. Clayton Vaughn has the night off, getting some well-deserved rest. All during the day, residents along Riverside Drive have been evacuating to higher ground, moving belongings to second floors of homes or loading them into trucks and U-Hauls. Tonight, the area is abandoned. A week's worth of heavy rain across northern Oklahoma been in the Riverside area tonight and is standing by with the latest. Mary?
Jill, I'm here at the pedestrian bridge, which is about 28th Street in Riverside. Now, you said the area is abandoned. Well, actually, the people who live along Riverside have abandoned, evicted their homes. They've gone away. But this place is by no means abandoned. There are cars up and down Riverside. The police have left this area. Their cars, they're low cars, and they left. They didn't want to get flooded and stalled here. And they've left, and people have started to come into this area, and there are a lot of people coming up and down this street, checking out the water, seeing where the levels are. And I'm sure that the police officer told us, they said, you know, if people don't need to be here, don't come down here. This is not the place to be right now. You can, as I said, we're at the pedestrian bridge, and the water here is rising very quickly. If you look behind me, you can see what is the pedestrian bridge. And at this point, we got close to it and we measured it. It's about 1 foot below the pedestrian bridge. Now, Jill, when I talked to you at about 8:30 this evening, it was somewhere between 2 feet, right around there. So that gives you a very good indication how fast this water is rising. We've had to move our cameras back. We've been doing this all day long. We'll set up in one place and we've got to move 30 minutes later. We had to move 10 feet from where we first set up our cameras this evening. This water is coming in very quickly at this point. If you go beyond the pedestrian bridge and you head north, a lot of Riverside is already covered by the water. They've sandbagged the road shut so that we cannot get beyond 31st and Riverside. We can't go beyond that. We've got to head back towards East Tulsa to get out of this area when we leave here tonight. This water is rising quickly. It's rising very fast, and it's not a safe place to be. And again, the police said if you don't need to be here, don't come down here this evening.
Okay, Mary. That's a very good warning to pass along. Thank you very much. Thousands of people jammed the Brookside area at 49th and Peoria tonight to load 200,000 sandbags, most of which were taken to the Riverside area. The area became so congested that officials are now asking people to avoid that sandbagging location in the Bel Air Shopping Center. Many of the volunteers said that although they aren't being directly affected by the flood, they wanted to help. Further north on Peoria, an area that usually bustles on a Saturday night, was almost dark. Many businesses closed early. Several stores in the Stonehorse Shopping Center either cleared out their merchandise or took some flood precautions. Some of the owners say that while they don't expect flooding as far east as Peoria, they can't take chances with some merchandise such as clothing. Residents of the neighborhood just east of Peoria seem to be taking very little action to prevent flooding tonight. Most of them say they just don't believe the water could reach their area. 300,000 cubic feet of water has been shooting from the Keystone Dam every second since 4:15 this afternoon. That's an amazing amount of water. Terry Hadley has been at the Emergency Operations Center all night, and he is here with an update also. Terry?
Jill, nothing's changed. The latest word we have from the Army Corps of Engineers is that the current rate of release from Keystone Dam, 300,000 cubic feet of water per second, will be maintained throughout the night. We've had that rate for 6 hours now, and we seem to be getting some stability. The mood at the Emergency Operations Center seems to be more relaxed than last night. It seems the authorities now have a good idea of the type of flood we're going to get here in Tulsa. The only update they have really is about sandbags. They were airlifted from Kansas City. They were intended for individual property owners, but there have been so many volunteers, they've already been filled. Most of those bags have been used. In fact, we hear the corner of 31st and Riverside has been sandbagged, although nobody's really sure if it's needed. Jill? Back to you.
At least for, okay, apparently he can't hear me. Thank you, Terry. 1,500 to 2,000 people have been evacuated in Washington County, another area providing a lot of flooding. The town of Bartlesville, as we've mentioned, has been split in half by floodwaters. Many homes are completely underwater. We're going to have a live report, hopefully from Bartlesville, but there does seem to be some good news, at least tonight. The word is in Bartlesville that the flooding may be leveling off there. We hope to have a live report from Robert Joffe in just a few minutes. Now, Wendy Burkeen was in Bartlesville earlier today. Of course, she was up in a helicopter. She got to see sort of the bird's eye view of what the city looked like. She told us then that there were some homes that seemed to be 8, 9, 10 feet underwater up to their rooftops. As we mentioned, Bartlesville has been cut in half. The major streets there are closed. Much of the downtown area of Bartlesville has a lot of water in it. As we mentioned earlier, some road closings in Bartlesville. US 75 North is closed and 60 both directions is closed. Wendy is now back in our newsroom, and she's going to talk about what she saw in Bartlesville. Wendy?
Jill, what I saw was something we haven't seen all day. We've been out on Riverside Drive pretty much throughout the daylight hours today, but in Bartlesville they're fighting another battle once again that is just quite different than anything I've ever seen. We want to show you some of the pictures now that we shot from a helicopter up over Bartlesville. It is just amazing. There is so much water there. When we first got into the city, Jill, we came in by helicopter to pretty much the south and the east part of the city. And I was counting the number of homes that I saw that were flooded. They looked to be somewhat underwater. We're not talking rooftops at this point from what we saw, but later on, as we continued to fly around and hover over the city, we saw more and more and more homes that you could just see the water all around them. It is amazing, and not just homes, but buildings, and not just the southeast section of the city, but pretty much an entire circle around the city. They have farmland over there on the outskirts that is just flooded under. You can't see any grass whatsoever. And they have lines and rows, as you can see, of homes that just have water everywhere. It's amazing over there. And I talked earlier with Robert Joffe, who is over there, and he says that the people seem to be taking it in stride. It's amazing to me, with those kind of pictures and what's going on over there, that the people continue to be in a good mood. They, you know, for the circumstances, they are not down. They are. I asked him if anyone was, you know, crying, upset. He said, you know, you can tell that people are upset. It's a tragedy. It's dramatic. But the people are doing their best they can to face the situation and deal with it. And it's just amazing to me, Jill, that no one has been hurt.
Absolutely, Wendy. That was something I was going to mention, that luckily we haven't had any reports of any injuries or deaths from any of this, and that's just wonderful.
You know, I think a good part of it is that the people just, we had enough time that people could prepare, but really no one can prepare for things that we've seen out there today. And just the people should be commended for the way that they're behaving, how things are going, and what they're going through now when a lot of other people are going through the same thing. It's just amazing.
Okay, Wendy, thank you very much for that report. And we will have more of our special 10 o'clock report on the flooding, the rains of '86, in a moment. Bixby was one of the first communities to flood this week, and tonight Dana Sterling reports that most residents there have again taken the advice of their officials and left home.
Carmichael's produce is usually bustling this time of year, but tonight it's eerily silent, like the rest of Bixby. One scarecrow seems to be the only soul left awake. I'm standing in the middle of the Highway 64 bridge. It's where Memorial Drive crosses the Arkansas River into Bixby. This evening it was closed by the National Guard. Bixby is now cut in half. A few people are still at work putting sand in bags, but the silent river is already engulfing some homes. It's moving up the roads at the eastern edge of town and at the football stadium. The road closed sign is already underwater. Most people in Bixby have moved to dry ground and will return in the morning to see how high the water has gotten. Dana Sterling, Channel 6 News.
And up the river in Jenks, law enforcement officials are going to be spending the night at the Jenks Levee near the 96th Street Bridge. They'll be waiting to see how high the water gets also. Water continues to creep up in Sand Springs residential areas. The River Oaks areas flooded early in the day. That, predictably, was followed by the flooding of Meadow Valley Subdivision, a low-lying area near the Arkansas River. And now, residents in Apple Creek Apartments watch anxiously as the water approaches their doorsteps. The Sand Springs police continue to call for help with sandbagging at Fire Station number 2 in Sand Springs and downtown near City Hall. Tonight, hundreds of Tulsans are spending the night in Red Cross shelters. Untold numbers are staying in shelters set up by churches or with friends and relatives. Randy Lewin reports on how it's going for the families who now call some pretty unusual places home, at least for tonight.
Tulsa's convention center has hosted everything from rock and roll to rodeos. Though the floor is almost deserted now, the Red Cross is preparing for a busy night. Okay, thank you. Creekmore's grabbed a few things and left their West Tulsa home for the convention center. There's 5 in the family now, and a 6th due in 2 months.
It's moving around a lot, quite a bit. It's going to be a pretty good-sized baby, the doctor says. So everything's going okay, though.
We're just waiting for the water to, to reach us because it's getting up there, next to the levee.
How did you happen to pick this place to come?
I heard it on TV.
Central High School is one of the Red Cross's busiest shelters. Over 300 people, many of them living along Charles Page Boulevard, have come here to make the best of things for now. For how long, no one knows. Red Cross volunteer Sue Hickman comes from Midland, Texas. She's here to help put this center in operation.
We've had very good community participation in this shelter. The community people, they have brought in their personal TVs, videos, cassettes for the youngsters. The children and the elder people have become friends, and they've kind of adopted each other, and it's been a real warm experience that we've had here.
You mean the people in Oklahoma are friendlier than those in Texas?
Well, I don't know if I can say that or not, but they have been very, very good to be around.
Sue has a personal reason for coming here. Her son lives in Bristow, and if she ever catches her breath, she'll give him a call and tell him she's here. Randy Lewin, Channel 6 News.
Well, as Randy mentioned, one of those shelters is Central High School. We have had a report tonight that Central High School is full. They're asking people, instead of going to Central, to perhaps come downtown to the Civic Center. We do have quite a long list of shelters to give you tonight, so let's get started with those. Starting off, the Tulsa Elk food and all kinds of entertainment to those people who have had to leave their homes tonight. The community-wide ambulance service is offering free transportation to people who need to get out of flooding areas. That number, 743-3933, for transportation help from community-wide ambulance. They will take you to a shelter or to a friend's house within the Tulsa area. Once again, we'll be back with some more of our special report on the Rains of '86 in a moment. And welcome back. I have moved from one studio into our other studio to talk about our map again. We received so many phone calls from people after the last time we showed you this that we thought we ought to come back here during the 10 o'clock broadcast and do a little bit more with it. Thank you for all of your recommendations and suggestions. As you've seen, we've added some stuff to it that hopefully will make this even easier to understand. And let me explain what we have here. Again, this is a large-scale topographical map from the U.S. Geological Survey on the land contours of the Tulsa area. It goes from Keystone Dam, 40 miles worth of the Arkansas, down past Bixby. What we've done here, these areas that are marked in red tape are the areas that the emergency operations people were suggesting be evacuated in the event that we went to 300,000 cubic feet per second at Keystone, which of course we did about 4 o'clock this afternoon. That's what those red areas are. We would assume most of those areas have been evacuated by now. The blue areas that we've had in here in the past, and let me point out some of our streets in here. This is downtown, this yellow area up here at the top, if we can go up there. Okay. This is 11th Street. Farther down, we've marked off every 2 miles as going south. This is 31st Street, 51st Street. There's the Skelly Bridge. 71st Street with the 71st Street Bridge, and 91st, Jenks, and all of that. The blue area is a marking of contours. Now, this is not necessarily an area that is going to flood. This is just the area of level above sea level that corresponds to what has flooded or is about to flood near the river. And for example, as we've said before, the river, normal river level right about through here, say between 31st and 51st on the river, is usually about 620 feet above sea level. We have heard of flooding at about 635 feet, which gives us 15 feet of extra water from normal. All that this blue is, and also the red around it, that just marks where else in that area it's 635 feet above sea level. We're not saying that that is going to flood. However, since we showed you that on the map, we have received some more information from the Emergency Operations Center and have marked our map to correspond with theirs. That's why we have some new colors on here. This purple, we have some up here around Sand Springs, some here on the west side of the river. This is around the Westport Apartments near downtown. Here along Riverside, 31st to 41st roughly, and so on. Now these are areas that the emergency people downtown do think are going to flood because of this 300,000 cubic feet per second release rate that we have now from Keystone. Moving farther down south now as we go down along the Arkansas, you can see some more about where they think it's going to flood. This is between 71st and 91st. We have some flood areas on the west side and also into Jenks. Quite a bit of Jenks was ordered evacuated earlier today. I think that's because a lot of this is low-lying area. Not necessarily going to flood, but just because of the low contours of it, possibly. And then, again, moving farther down into Bixby, if we can do that. Again, this is just based on contours. Wendy Burkeen reported earlier this afternoon that a subdivision in this area was flooding somewhat. Therefore, based on its contours, this area is also in about the same level. When Dana Sterling reported the bridge on Memorial across the river going into Bixby was closed, you can see why. It's right in the middle of all of that. So that's the kind of situation we're looking at, and we will keep this up to date as we learn more over the next day or more. Right now we're going to go back to the other studio, to Mike Anderson. Luckily the weather has been pretty good today, so it hasn't added to our problem. Let's hope that keeps up. Mike can tell us what's going on now. Mike?
Well, Jill, it has been a long and busy day for all of much of northeastern Oklahoma, but good news today is a cold front moved through, bringing that threat of heavy rains way down to our south, and some fall-like conditions moved in along with that cold front. We started off with a morning low of 66 degrees. 74 was our high, but that was actually at midnight. Afternoon temperatures remained in the 60s. Normals 55 and 80 for this time of year. A record low of 39 degrees way back in 1968. A record high all the way up to 97 degrees back in 1931. Here in Tulsa, we continue with cloudy skies, currently 61 degrees, a relative humidity of 78%. Winds light out of the north and pressure falling at 30.10 inches. Now, we haven't had much rain across northeastern Oklahoma today. In fact, radar just shows a few light sprinkles. But the weekly rainfall shows generally 5 to 10 inches of rain in the yellow. Here in Tulsa, around 8 inches of rain the last 5 to 6 days. The light green, 10 to 15 inches of rain across much of northeastern Oklahoma. 15 to 20 inches of rain this week in the darker green areas, and even 20 inches of rain up around Ponca City and Newkirk across Kay County and extreme western Osage County. Also, Sedan reported over 20 inches of rain. Much of Chautauqua County in Kansas also reported 20 inches of rain. But the thing I want you to look at in this map is look at all of the heavy rains off across north central Oklahoma into northwestern Oklahoma, because those rains are actually moving into Keystone Lake, because all of the rain that fell across north central Oklahoma flows down the rivers into the Keystone Lake. Now right now the Crest and Cimarron River is still in Payne County, and it looks like the Crest and Arkansas River is still about 20 miles northwest of the lake. So really the highest surge of water in those rivers is still away from the lake, and that should be moving into Keystone Lake later tomorrow morning. So really the worst of the water into Keystone Lake is still yet to come. And again, the water from Keystone Lake will continue to go down Arkansas River. The Caney River, which is being fed by the Copan and Gila lakes up in the north, will continue to bring water south. And also the Grand River across much of northeastern Oklahoma, where the rains were heavy in that area, will also continue moving south. And they'll all meet in Muskogee probably during tomorrow and the first part of next week. Now our satellite picture tonight, well, this satellite picture is actually noon today, shows some very heavy thunderstorms across western Texas, also some showers and thunderstorms across southeastern Oklahoma into Arkansas. As we put the satellite into motion, those storms rapidly moved on off to the east, More heavy thunderstorms, though, developed in southwestern Texas, and this is where the next upper-level storm system is. Looks like this will continue to slowly move to the east. Now, that cold front that moved through earlier this morning has now moved all the way down into central Texas, stretching through eastern Arkansas. Cool northerly winds continue north of that front. Warm and moist southerly winds, though, continue south of it. So it looks like this frontal system will be where most of the heavy thunderstorms will be confined during the next 24 hours. Now, it does look like this will be slowly moving back up to the Red River tomorrow, but the good news is it looks like heavy rains will remain out of northeastern Oklahoma. Right now, temperatures generally in the low 60s here, 61 in Tulsa. Cooler in the 50s, though, to the north and west, 55 degrees in Wichita, a cool 54 degrees over in Dodge City. Now, by tomorrow afternoon, again, that frontal system will be stretching right along the Red River. Most of the heavy rains across Texas, extreme southeastern Oklahoma. We could see a few light sprinkles during the day tomorrow, but generally partly cloudy to cloudy skies. In fact, a few breaks in the clouds right along the Oklahoma-Kansas border tomorrow. As this area of high pressure begins to move into our region, that continues to bring in some fall-like weather in our region during the next few days, so a lot cooler and drier air heading our way. In fact, high temperatures tomorrow, look at that, 40s and 50s across the northern plains and Great Lakes, 60s across much of the country's midsection, including the northwestern half of Oklahoma, some 70s in extreme southeastern Oklahoma, and still some record heat across the southeastern part of the country with highs in the 80s and 90s. Now let's take a look at our specific forecast. For tonight, cloudy skies, a few patches of light rain possible, nothing heavy is expected, light northerly winds, a temperature dropping down to a pleasant 54 degrees. Tomorrow morning, still cloudy skies continuing, a few thunder showers, but again, it looks like the best chance to the south. Temperatures in the mid-70s, sunrise at 7:22. For tomorrow afternoon, mostly cloudy skies. Again, a little sun, especially to the north of Tulsa tomorrow. Again, that chance of thunderstorms to the south of Tulsa. Northerly winds will keep it on the cool side, an afternoon high only climbing up to 63 degrees. Now, by Monday, fair to partly cloudy skies will be the rule. We'll start off with a cool 50 degrees, slowly warming up to 68. Tuesday, well, it doesn't look like any more rain in our forecast. That's good news. Partly cloudy skies on Tuesday with an afternoon high of 73. And Wednesday, a little bit warmer, partly cloudy with a high in the mid-70s.
This cooler weather has been a whole lot more pleasant.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot better to see the heavy rains way off to our south.
That's been wonderful.
Yeah.
Mike, keep it that way.
Okay, we'll try.
Thank you, Mike. We do have some reports of road closings, which we probably ought to show you now, just to keep those straight in case you have to do any traveling. So let's take a look at those. State Highway 20 west of Skiatook is now reported open. State Highway 10 east of Skiatook, however, is closed. State Highway 11 north of Sperry is closed. State Highway 151 across the top of the Keystone Dam is closed. That's a pretty natural one to imagine. Charles Page Boulevard between South 65th West Avenue and South 81st West Avenue is closed. Sand Springs, of course, experiencing quite a bit of flooding in the low-lying areas. State Highway 10 east of Miami, closed. US 75 north of Bartlesville to Dewey is closed. We've mentioned that one a few times. We did report that State Highway 123 is closed. However, Robert Jaffe tells us that that is now open. US 60, however, is blocked off in both directions from Bartlesville. US 75 south of Bartlesville is expected to close in the next couple of hours, and that was reported quite a while ago, so it may be closed by now. State Highway 51 and State Highway 48 junction, barricaded now by the Department of Transportation. Only Manford residents will be allowed through that intersection. State Highway 108 north of Ripley and State Highway 18 north of Cushing are closed. State Highway 51, another stretch of it from State Highway 97 to Highway 48 is closed. And west of Guthrie, State Highway 33 has one lane only open in all directions. State Highway 33 east of Guthrie is closed beyond Coyle. Of course, now we're getting into north central Oklahoma where there's still quite a bit of very heavy flooding. State Highway 66 is closed between Davenport and Stroud. US 177 north of State Highway 105 to the Cimarron River. Of course, the Cimarron is what's feeding Keystone. You can tell all of that's going to be flooded. I-35 has been closed at the Cimarron Bridge, both north and southbound lanes. If you're traveling north from Oklahoma City, take Highway 31 west, Highway 74 north, then Highway 51 east, which will lead traffic back to I-35 north of those closed bridges. It's going to be a long way around, but to avoid the flooding, that's what you're going to have to do. Okay, some more information that hopefully will be of help tonight. The City of Tulsa has set up a special hotline for flood victims. Now, this line is for housing, assistance, and flood insurance questions. That number is 592-7900. And again, this line is for flood victims only. If you have any other questions and you're not a flood victim, you should call the Stormwater Management Department. That number, 592-7800. Public Service Company has been cutting power to neighborhoods expected to flood as a safety measure. About 8 o'clock tonight, PSO told us that they were shutting off the power from 31st to 51st from Riverside Drive and 3 blocks east. And of course, that is the area that looks like it's going to be flooded. That service will be restored once the floodwaters recede. Also, Oklahoma Natural Gas has also begun turning off the gas service to homes being flooded. Earlier, employees were going door to door in the area of 51st and Riverside. If you have an emergency and you need to have your water turned off, call 250-2464 or 250-2467. That's for sanitary sewer problems. I am told now that Robert Jaffe is available live from Bartlesville, and he's on the phone with us now. Robert, what's the situation up there?
Joe, better than being on the phone, we're live here in Bartlesville. Things are a little bit calmer, as you mentioned earlier. People have gone through quite a bit here, but yet the atmosphere seems to be calm. There have been about 2,000 people evacuated here in the Bartlesville, Washington County area. Let's take a look at some pictures now that we got earlier today. As you can see by them, it's simply amazing here. Houses are completely underwater. Cars are underwater. A lot of people, they knew the water was coming, but they just refused to leave. We spoke to a number of people, and this is one man we spoke to who just started evacuating the area.
Well, it's that little gray house sitting down there, and it's about halfway full of water.
And so what are you doing?
No, I'm moving a few things out, trying to salvage a little bit.
Is it, are you finding it difficult to salvage stuff?
Yeah, because most of it's all gone.
As you can hear, I mean, it's all nonchalant. Everything's all gone. Most of the people I speak to here say, we'll just have to start all over, and that's what they're going to have to do. The good news finally has come here in Bartlesville, and that is the river has crested, as they predicted, at 31 feet. It's going to be about 3 or 4 days before any of it even begins to recede, so it's going to be many more days and weeks and months of cleanup here in Bartlesville. One of the things they need most of all are boats. They're looking for those to be donated. If you have a boat and you can provide services here in Bartlesville, let me give you a number you can call. That is 336-2710. 336-2710. If you have a boat and you can help out here in Bartlesville, because that is the only way to get around the town, please call the number and volunteer. This is Robert Jaffe reporting live in Bartlesville.
Okay, Robert, thank you very much for that report. I erroneously mentioned that Robert was on the phone. Of course, he is live in Bartlesville. Several minor emergency centers now offer free tetanus shots. Locations include the St. Francis Emergency Care Center at 77th and South Memorial and all CrestMed Convenience Care Centers in Tulsa, Sand Springs, and Broken Arrow. Now, people exposed to the floodwaters might consider getting a tetanus shot, especially if you have an open wound through which bacteria might enter or if you have not had a tetanus shot in the last 5 years. Sand Springs Animal Shelter has transferred all of its animals to the Sapulpa Pet Aid Society Animal Shelter. We got to get the pets out of the water, too. They also rescued a lot of animals from the Sand Springs flooding. If you live in Sand Springs and you have lost a pet, you can call them tomorrow morning, beginning at 9 a.m. The number 227-2722. And finally, we do want to make one correction from an earlier list we ran that people called us. We said earlier that people should take their mobile homes to the Cavalier Mobile Home Park, but we got the address wrong. That address is 30th and North Sheridan, not 30th and South Sheridan, and that's for people who have had to leave their mobile homes but want to get them out of the flooding. Hopefully we're going to have something a little bit lighter in just a moment here. We'll continue with more of our special report in a moment. I was about to say something really dumb, like Bob Stevens is here sitting in for Bill Teagans, until I remembered that it's Saturday and he's supposed to be here.
This is our show. What are you doing here anyway?
Oh, goodness. But since it is Saturday,
Yes.
obviously that means college football. Most of
Yes.
us weren't watching much of that today, but it did go on.
It did go on, and we saw some of it even here on Channel 6. Of course, what went on in sports today, obviously pretty trivial, all things considered, but maybe tonight we can treat sports the way it ought to be. I guess. Crazy guy. Just wanted to kind of liven things up.
I gotta say, though, based on your
Yeah.
scoreboard, this was definitely a day for the ranked teams to kind of do whatever they wanted. There were a lot of wimp matchups in that one
it
today.
was kind of their day, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. We'll be back for more updates in a moment. tonight, Muskogee officials and residents are bracing themselves for the worst. Water from the overflowing rivers and dams is expected to hit that city, a convergence of 3 rivers, sometime between 6 a.m. and noon tomorrow. Rick Lammy has a report.
Barbara Crossland tells callers this will be her last phone conversation for a while, at least from this house. Barbara, her husband Sidney, and their 3 boys were one of the last families to clear out of their small neighborhood in Muskogee. By noon tomorrow, officials say their home could be under 10 feet of water.
20 years ago in April, I had a home destroyed by a tornado, and 4 years ago, I had a home destroyed by fire. So what else is left? Flood.
Less than 300 yards behind the Crosslands' house, the muddy Arkansas River is about to come bursting out of its banks. Downstream a few hundred more yards lies the Muskogee generating station. Part of the power plant is directly in the path of expected floodwaters. Power plant workers say they may have to shut at least one of 4 turbine units down. Floodwaters could crest here sometime between 6 a.m. and noon tomorrow. Workers built earthen dikes around the plant tonight. Officials have already de-energized equipment in low-lying areas. Workers at the Muskogee water treatment plant near the banks of the Arkansas River sandbag flood-threatened generators to keep water supplies coming. And folks living in the Riverside mobile home park packed up everything that wasn't bolted down and headed for high ground. At nightfall, some homes in low-lying areas around Muskogee were already flooded. And tonight, residents here are looking towards Tulsa to see what kind of trouble they can expect tomorrow. Rick Lammy, Channel 6 News, Muskogee.
And, of course, we will have crews in the Muskogee area since that area is supposed to be very badly hit by flooding tomorrow. Officials of the rural fire district near Webbers Falls are calling for help tonight. Evacuation is underway at Webbers Falls. Authorities are asking that volunteers, especially those with trucks and pickups, report to the Gore City Hall to help. And once again, that effort for Webbers Falls is being organized at the Gore City Hall. And once more, we want to go back to Mary Grady. She has been retreating all evening as the water goes up at 31st and Riverside. Mary, are your waders full yet?
No, but my feet are wet and they are cold, Jill. It's getting rather chilly out here. You're right. We've been retreating all evening long. We were at the top of this newscast at about 10 o'clock. We were at the pedestrian bridge. And during the live shot, you know, I was sinking. It was getting so wet so quickly. We had to get out of there. We had to move. Right now, we're at 58th and Riverside. And my feet right now are on the street. If I take a step and about a half, I'm at the bank of the Arkansas River, what is now the bank of the Arkansas River. As you can see, the water is coming up. It's coming up very quickly. As I said, when we were at the pedestrian bridge, the water was coming over even more rapidly there. Earlier this evening, we had taken some videotape of some people that had been sandbagging that area. And if we can go to that videotape, you can see, if we can go to that videotape. Oh, we don't have the tape. All right. We did have a lot of people out there at the pedestrian bridge that were trying to sandbag that area and keep it from flooding so quickly. Obviously, it didn't work. The water's coming so rapidly. We'll be out here this evening, and we'll keep you up to date on what's going on. But again, this river is rising rather rapidly.
Okay, Mary, thank you very much for that report. And as Mary mentioned, we are going to be with you all evening long as it takes. We do have crews out in Bartlesville, in Tulsa. We're going to be keeping track of the shelters and the flooding as it goes on, and hopefully keep you up to date in case as the water comes up, as it is expected to do over the next several hours. But for now, I would certainly like to thank the 2 gentlemen here with me. There they are. Okay, I knew they were here. Bob Stevens, Mike Anderson, thank you very much for having me here tonight, and we will be having updates as they become necessary throughout the evening, but that's all of our time for now. Stay with us and have a good evening. Good night.
Clothing for Channel 6 News provided by Harold's.